and welcome back to 90s Noise. This is Ashley, born 1988.
And this is April, born 1991.
So we have a very interesting episode today, a very different concept that we kind of are going off of. It's, what are we calling it? Adult Toons versus Baby Toons? Is that
Something
what we
like that, yeah.
Baby versus adult. It's going to be about a lot of the classic animated cartoons that a lot of kids grew up on, and for some reason I think it started in like the mid 80s. I don't know who started it, honestly, but they thought it was a great idea to take these old cartoon characters and create a baby version of them, a kid version.
I think it was Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna go with Hanna-Barbera. They are to blame for this very weird concept, and I remember some of them, but I didn't realize the scope of how many there actually were, and it's a little bit mind-boggling. Do you remember any of these, April?
So talking about it, as we've talked kind of throughout the week and everything, there's like one that I specifically remember because it was playing on kids' channels when I was growing up. And so if I was homesick or anything like that, watching like, I think it was Cartoon Network that it was on, that I would just have it kind of in the background as I'm like laying there in a medicinal haze because of all the medicine taking while sick. It's one of those where you kind of feel like the memory is kind of like, probably as a kid, you're probably like, oh, is this how it feels to be tripping?
Yeah, right?
There is one that I think we forgot to put on this list. Didn't the Jetsons have a kids one too? I think they did.
Oh my God. Did they? If they did, they need to stop because
exactly.
That's ridiculous. I don't need to see George as a teenager. He's too annoying even as an adult.
That's very true. But all right, anyways, let's go ahead and get going on some of these. We're gonna kind of start with the ones that we have those like long lost memories that we maybe watched like once or twice the episode and kind of were probably just like, what the hell is this? Is this a flashback or something?
Right? Yeah, seriously.
You know what? Well, let's start with the one that kind of, even just reading it kind of creeps me out.
Oh gosh, what's that?
Muppet Babies.
Oh, the Muppets. You don't like the Muppets?
I do like the original Muppets. Like all of their different like holiday movies and stuff. I don't think I really watched the show much.
Right.
It was mostly just like their movies that came on. But to think of it as a Muppet Babies.
Okay, it's cute though. It's cute.
Really?
I kind of feel like I did watch this one as a kid. I could be completely wrong, but it sort of looked familiar to me, the characters and the sort of just the way that the episodes were going. But I don't know for sure, but definitely I don't know. I definitely liked the Muppet Babies in general. Like I feel like the concept of it was pretty good for a young audience. Like I did watch one episode and it was sort of educational, but on a very small scale. Like obviously for young kids you're not gonna, but they were kind of being imaginative in these situations. So it was very use your imagination, creatively think on these topics. And I don't know, I thought it's a good show to watch as a kid growing up. I feel like the content was more relatable. The content was more, because a lot of these kid shows were very violent and the Muppets weren't about too much violence, and especially not the Muppet Babies. They were all toddlers and diapers type situation, almost kind of like the Rugrats, I feel.
Yeah, did you say that it was more animated as opposed to actual puppet? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, and it was an animated show. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't Muppets. Okay. So I guess that's a big difference between the original. But it was on for, I don't know how many seasons, but it started in 84 and it ended in 91. So it had a really long run for like a kid's cartoon show. And I think it was kind of almost the original show to do a baby version of it.
Okay.
And something that I found out about it was actually like the top Saturday morning cartoon. Like during the first couple of years that it was on, it was like the top cartoon out. So it did apparently do pretty well back in the 80s. Maybe my sister watched it, honestly, since she was probably more geared towards that at that age. So she might have actually watched it during its original airing.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like the original Muppets, watching it, sometimes I could only watch for so long just because, I don't know, it almost was like how I think Toy Story was for a lot of people. Kind of made me think like my stuffed animals were having conversations without me and everything.
Oh my God.
I think it's interesting that they did do it as more of an animation than the Muppets itself, especially since Jim Henson was still alive at that time and everything.
Yeah, I think it was his idea or somebody's idea, but I mean, Jim Henson went with it and he was like, this is a great idea, let's do it. And he was right. It was super successful apparently, and it worked out really well for them. Like, they also did an updated version of the Muppet Babies a couple years ago. I think, maybe through Disney, I'm not sure exactly.
Probably
but yeah, they had an updated one, which is very interesting to know that people are still wanting the Muppets for their kids.
I can see that for sure, just because now the people having kids are people in their 20s, mid to late 20s, 30s. So it's those of us who grew up on like the original Muppets. I mean, sitting around with the family on the holidays watching those specials. So now as a adult, I can understand why there's more of a push to bring that back for a new generation.
I mean, the Muppets are super successful regardless of how you put them out. I mean, you could do so many different versions of them and people would still take to it for some reason. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's creepy. I do feel like the Muppets are a little creepy and a little bit annoying. There's something about them that really speaks to people, and they keep tuning in. I mean, you have the Muppets, you have Sesame Street, which is right there along this, with them. I don't think I ever watched it though much growing up as a kid. I don't think I was ever really into the Muppets in a sense where I wanted any of their merchandise, or we didn't have any of those. We might have had a Big Bird from Sesame Street at one point, but we didn't ever have anything from the Muppets, which is interesting to think about, because I'm sure they put out a lot of toys, and I would think they would have put out a lot of stuff like that.
Oh yeah, if I remember correctly, we had, I think, a Miss Piggy, and I'm probably gonna get shit for broadcasting this, but it was actually one of my brothers and one of their stuffed animals. Like I mean, the Muppets were big. Oh shit, I'm gonna have to see if I can find the picture from my room growing up. Of course, it had originally been one of my brother's rooms. Then I got it once I came along. The curtains in my bedroom, for the longest time, most of my memory from in that bedroom was Miss Piggy.
Really? That's hilarious.
I am definitely gonna have to see if I can't pull a picture from my bedroom.
That would be great to see.
From whatever angle that would show those curtains.
But they were your brother's curtains?
They originally, if I remember correctly, they originally were. Obviously, that was my room from being a baby up until like junior high when my brother moved out. I had those curtains those curtains stayed for the majority of the time I was in that room. I think finally in like junior high, I was finally just, these need to go. This is embarrassing. Having friends come over, and I already have this little like baby thing around at the top of where the ceiling meets the wall. There's like a strip of like baby characters or whatever.
Oh my God. Didn't all the houses in the 90s have those? My room had that same thing. It was a little strip of something. I don't know what.
Yeah. And so it was already, that was so high to get and change that my parents were like, you're just going to have to deal with that because that's going to be a pain in the ass to change. And I was like, okay, if I have to deal with that in my bedroom, we got to get rid of these curtains.
Yes, gotta lay the law down. Get rid of these Muppet curtains.
You know what? I honestly completely had forgotten about that until just now.
That's hilarious.
So I did have a lot with the Muppets.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Right.
Not the Muppet Baby. That just, like I said, is kind of, with it being animated though, I'm sure I probably watched on like a Saturday morning and didn't realize it kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, depending on how they did their reruns and stuff. But yeah, if it was on Saturday mornings, I'm sure we probably watched it as well. But it, again, as one of those shows where you're just mindlessly probably watching it and you're not really connecting like, oh, yeah, like this is that.
Yeah.
So, especially since it's animated, it probably as a kid didn't feel like the Muppets. So
Very
it was
true.
probably a whole separate thing that you just kind of were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that is very likely. Like I said, I don't even really remember that they had done Muppets Babies. And that actually went through into the 90s.
Yeah, for sure. I do feel like it's not the worst show on this list that we have. I did feel like it had a lot more redeeming qualities than some of the other ones.
So let's touch on the next one. You said that Yogi Bear had
Yo Yogi.
What?
Right? I was totally thrown off when I discovered this because I, for a fact, know I never watched this show.
Yeah.
But what? Okay, well, it's Hanna-Barbera, so we just kind of have to. They were probably following the Muppets lead, and we're like, you know what? We gotta bring Yogi back, and what better way to bring him back than as a teenager with all of his crew.
So was Boo Boo in it? Like, as
Yeah.
because I always think of, in the original, I always think of Boo Boo as being a kid just because he is shorter and everything.
Right.
I always think of him as being like the younger brother, and so like I guess what was he, like super baby, or is he supposed to be the same age as Yogi?
He's not the same age. He's definitely much younger. But that's the thing with a lot of these teenage whatever shows. There's not a huge continuity thing with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think everything kind of is the same as for the original. They probably had to like manipulate some things in order to have all the characters.
It's a multiverse. They're different variants in a multiverse.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, and speaking about that, so they have a new show coming out called Jellystone. It's either out or I think it's coming out next year, which I found to be extremely just like, I don't know, whatever. So some of the original characters that they had from Yogi, they are changing their gender in the new show to make it not so male dominated. So it completely just fucks everything up with how you grew up with the characters originally.
What?
So now you have males that are now females. Like it doesn't I don't know what's going on.
What the fuck? So I just pulled it. You piqued my interest on that. So I just jumped on and looked it up. So it's actually already out. So it's already had a it's already had a season because it like started in
Ooh, I need to watch
2021.
it. Okay.
So what the flying fuck? This is just okay. I'm not gonna lie. This is like looks kind of like a dime store version of it. Like even
really?
it's very it's very it is very Cartoon Network. You know how like Cartoon Network,
yeah.
it kind of they had like probably the same artist production team working on everything. It seemed like there's always, because they always ended up like doing crossovers, and this just is
Why are
weird.
you smiling like that?
I don't know.
That's creepy. Yogi don't do that.
This is honestly, this would be born in the 90s. Watching Yogi Bear, I don't even know when that had originally come out, but
The 60s.
this is like, I don't even know how to explain this. Watching that little commercial for it, this feels like it feels like a bad trip.
I was just gonna say that, right? Doesn't it? What is happening? Oh
gosh, that's...
I mean, I love that they're trying to keep our childhood characters alive and they're giving them new life and sort of going with what new generations are probably wanting, but damn, sometimes don't mess with the original that much.
No.
That's crazy. I love the original Yogi Bear. I loved the animation style. I loved how simplistic it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was just something about it.
Agreed. I did too. That was always fun to watch. Like Saturday mornings, whenever it was on, I did enjoy watching Yogi. Mm-hmm. Oh, Yogi Bear and Boo Boo and everything. I could still hear it in my head, like that the
Oh yeah,
actor
his
who played
voice.
him and everything. Since it was the 60s, I don't even think that
Yeah.
that gentleman's still around or anything, but
The original is not, because he was the same one that did the original voice of Elroy.
that's right.
So he passed. Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. Because that's the thing too. Like the one thing with some of those cartoons from back in the 60s, honestly up to the 80s probably. The actors had most of them had contracts with studio.
Yeah.
And so that's why a lot of like the original Disney animation movies share the same voice actors. A lot of like the Hanna-Barbera ones share the same voice actors.
Right.
Because
Which makes
of that.
sense.
Good gracious, though. That Jellystone's it's almost like I hate to say it, but it's almost like a car wreck where you can't look away.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. You're kind of like,
what am I watching? But I kind of can't stop.
right. Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately for Yo Yogi, though, it only had one season. So here's what I found out about why it was canceled due to the success of Saved by the Bell. What? So yeah, because of the network it was on, NBC at the time, NBC saw the success of Saved by the Bell, and they were like, we want to focus more on shows like that, more teen type shows. So Yo Yogi was on like the same time slot or same time period, and they realized this is not going to cut it. We gotta scrap that one. So I thought that was really interesting that Saved by the Bell
knocked it out. Yeah. So also just kind of a little, just looking at it a little bit here, they had partnered with Kellogg's. And
they did, yeah.
Offered 3D glasses, like the cardboard 3D glasses with the red and blue lenses. And some of those episodes had 3D portions, like segments to it.
Yeah, they did, which is so cool to think about. I would have loved to have popped those on a Saturday morning and watched some 3D.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of a new concept, honestly, for TV shows to be throwing in some of those 3D elements. I'm curious as to anybody else has done that, who started it or anything. That's really...
Yeah, because I remember you couldn't buy 3D glasses or anything. It had to come with something specific.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was when Kellogg's was doing it.
It probably was with Kellogg's that I got ours.
But it was a part of the box.
Yeah.
And you had to you popped it out and everything.
Yep.
I do remember that, but I wonder if it was like the same kind of thing where it was they had partnered with somebody for like a show or a movie.
Maybe.
And just were doing it that way. That is pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't recall ever seeing this. I just watched the little trailer for it thing, and I don't like it. Kind of reminds me of like, honestly, Berenstain Bears.
Yeah, that's true. It did kind of have that vibe.
And kind of that like that drawing, that like artistic look. Like every character's got like lots of colors and everything. But yeah, no.
It was very well. I mean, the Yo Yogi was very 90s. Like the theme intro. Like it was. You could tell just the style of it, the creative arts and whatever you call the people, very reminiscent of the 90s, like straight out. Like it was okay. It was an okay theme song, I guess, but I didn't care for watching what I did watch of it. Just give me the original Yogi. Like I don't need this version of him. I don't. What are we doing?
Oh man, yeah. It was the baby boom tunes. It's what we could call it. It seems like it was kind of like almost like a baby boomer of Baby Toons and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of these were from like baby boomers cartoons that they grew up with.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of It's kind of perfect in a sense.
I like it. Baby boom tunes.
Now, next we're gonna kind of be transitioning into some of these quickly because very little memories on some of them. But the next one, Flintstones, yeah,
Okay.
Flintstones Kids.
This one, I honestly, this one's so cringe. This is literally at the bottom of my list. Like this one was awful. I can't with this one. I have no idea what was happening with it. Did you watch any of it?
So I didn't rewatch with this, but looking back, when I was looking back, and even just right now, I do recall seeing some of these
Really?
episodes like very vaguely, and so and since it was more of a late 80s based one, I think it was probably like my first couple years of life with my brothers watching it. And so I just, for me personally, it's one of those that I do recognize some of these little like stills from the shows, especially Wilma, like the baby Wilma. I do recognize that character, but that's really all I got on that, on the Flintstones Kids. Personally, and I'll be honest, I didn't even really care much for the original Flintstones.
Yeah, same. The Flintstones was created for adults. It wasn't created for kids. So probably if we were watching it growing up, it probably just went over our head. We were probably like, this is like what's happening.
Yeah, I know for me, like very true on that. And I guess for us too, we had the live action version that came out in the 90s.
We had to go suffer through that, didn't we?
Yeah, that's a good way
That
of
was
putting
just
it.
not necessary.
Very true.
Like the least necessary thing. I do appreciate them continuing on with trying to keep the Flintstones relevant, and they do have a new show coming out called Bedrock.
Oh my gosh, what?
That Elizabeth Banks is behind. So it could be good. It could be not good.
Is it like gonna be an actual show, or is it gonna be
I don't know if it's animated or live action. I don't know that there was that much information on it, but maybe.
I'm not seeing anything on
It's supposed to be coming on Fox next year.
That's interesting. Who ate up like Cartoon Network? Was it Fox?
I don't know. Yeah, I have to Google that one.
Because this was one, if I remember correctly, Flintstones had. I get them all so like confused and everything.
I know.
Yeah, I don't like now that you say, yeah, that was kind of the original Flintstones was the older generation's Simpsons in a sense.
Yeah.
It was a cartoon made for adults as opposed to kids. Kids could watch, but there would be a lot that they wouldn't comprehend.
Right. I think the kids probably would have watched it more for just the fact that it was kind of prehistoric based.
Yeah.
And you had Dino the dinosaur and just maybe like little cute elements like that the kids might have picked up on and been like, oh, hi.
I did like Dino.
Yeah.
I did always like Dino. That was probably honestly my favorite character.
I agree. Yeah. I can't remember if we had like a little stuffed plush of him or not. I feel like he definitely would have been something we would have had, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely one of the shows where the continuity did not continue because, you know, you have the four main adults and I don't think that they were ever together as teenagers. That one was just sort of a weird thing. And I didn't care for the theme song, that they updated the theme song to something else. And it didn't fit. I was like thinking about the original theme song, you know, like it's such a classic. And then this one came on and I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Like,
it's such a classic that I haven't seen the Flintstones in probably 10-15 years. And I can still do Flintstones.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the Flintstones?
Exactly. It's such a catchy, even though it's kind of ridiculous, it's catchy.
Yeah.
And you just can sing along to it. But yeah, it was boring. And they did have like this whole Just Say No to Drugs episode.
Oh, goodness.
Apparently it's kind of like their most infamous episode that they did with the kids. And yeah, it was awful. I tried watching it and yeah, it was so cringe. What is happening? Just say no to drugs. That's bad, Wilma. Like, you guys gotta stop.
Oh my gosh. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Not a
Goodness.
fan. Don't recommend it.
Next.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Next. Yeah. Well, then we have Tom and Jerry kids.
Okay. So I always liked the original because of, I mean, anything with the animals I loved, especially like cats. But real quick, I do want to touch on this. Did you ever, okay, I can never remember which one's which. First off, Tom's
Pretty sure
the
Tom is
cat, right? Because Tom
Yeah.
cat.
Tom is the cat.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's always my go-to, but then I'm afraid I'm gonna get it wrong.
Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Tom as the cat.
Yeah. But did you ever feel sorry for Tom? He kind of got the short end on a lot of things.
Yeah. I feel like you could feel sorry for both of them. I think that's kind of was the whole gist of the show is that you wanted to hate Tom, but then you also wanted to love him and feel sorry for him at the same time because
He's
what
always
is this
getting beat
relationship
up.
with cat and mouse? Yeah, he is. He's always getting beat up. Yeah, he's going after Jerry, but it's almost in like a non-threatening way. It's like they're living together, they're almost friends with each other, but then they just, are constantly going back and forth. They're pulling tricks and doing random stuff, and poor Tom's, has died like 10 times in an episode. And keeps coming back to life.
Yeah, for sure. So this one, I admit, I don't think I ever saw this kids show. Tom and Jerry kids show.
Yeah.
I guess it wasn't as violent as the original.
Yeah, probably toned down a smidge.
I don't know, like, no, I don't condone violence or anything like that, but sometimes in cartoons, it's like, it's a cartoon. You can
Right.
do whatever you want with that.
Exactly.
Do you remember watching it?
I don't think so, but I felt like the kids version of it was very similar to the original. Like I just felt like a lot of I think they did bring back a lot of the same type of scenarios and stuff for them. So it probably was very similar to the sense that you wouldn't be able to remember which one you did watch because it could have been either. But didn't you make a point before when we were talking about this? Like, why did they even need to bring them back as kids? Why couldn't they have brought them back as their original selves and just toned the show down? Because the cat and the mouse, like, they don't look any different. They're not really younger, are they? Like, it just...
Looking at these screen grabs and everything on IMDb, no, like the cover for Tom and Jerry Kids Show, you can definitely tell a difference, especially with Tom.
Right.
But like these pictures, these photos that are just on IMDb from it, I'm not seeing really any difference in. I mean, maybe Tom's just a little.
He's a little younger,
shorter,
sure.
like not quite as long.
Right.
But everybody else looks practically the same.
The same. Yeah, that was kind of the weird thing with me. I'm like, they look the same. And I mean, cats and mice don't live that long, so they couldn't have been that old in the original to begin with. So now we're shrinking them even more.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does. I think what the thing was for this was that this is supposed to be their kids. It's not actually Tom and Jerry that we know.
Oh, it's their kids.
Their kids. Because the little tag on here, it's an updated version of classic Tom and Jerry cartoon from the 40s, 50s. The kids in these cartoons are far less violent than their parents were, but still find some ways to cause plenty of trouble for each other and everyone else around. The show also features other Tex Avery characters such as Droopy and Spike, along with their kids.
Okay, so that kind of makes a little bit more sense then.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was the same way. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, but okay, let's go with it.
All right. Thank you, Hanna-Barbera.
So that wasn't a Hanna-Barbera one? I don't think so. Was it? I didn't think it was.
Yeah, Tom and Jerry is a Hanna-Barbera thing.
Oh. There's so many Hanna-Barbera ones that I just...
So many. They ruled that time period.
Understatement.
And they had tons more, but I don't think I ever watched any of those.
I mean, I think the production company's still churning stuff out even now. I'm not sure. I could be completely wrong on that, but
Yeah, if they had any kids, whoever is there, I mean, they're well off. They're doing, like I said, all of these shows are still putting out stuff. I mean, they still have Tom and Jerry stuff going on now. I mean, like that's the crazy thing about these cartoons from way back when. So many generations have been able to grow up with them. And I feel like most of these are ones that I could see continuing to be put out for generations and generations. They're good. I don't know. There's just something about most of these that just have really good, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't know. I like Tom and Jerry. I think it really was super different from a lot of the cartoons because there was no dialogue. Like you know what I mean? Like you had to pick up on all of the, other clues that I was putting out. And I think that's so different than what you can find even still today.
Yeah, I don't think that would honestly work very well today. I don't, but like you said, and I'm glad you pointed it out because for the life of me, I couldn't remember if I was remembering that correctly, that there was no dialogue whatsoever. Where it was very true. These animals could be true animal. Kind of liked, but kind of also as a kid, I think sometimes I wanted the dialogue. Like that made some shows for me. I did like watching Tom and Jerry, but they did a great job with the music on that for sure, and the sound effects.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think it was super well done, and that's probably why we don't know who's Tom and who's Jerry because no one said.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when you watch this Tom and Jerry kids show, was there dialogue?
No, there's no dialogue.
Okay, so they kept with that.
Well, I will say there was like an elephant that they encountered, and the elephant said something. But no, there was no other dialogue.
So, pup named Scooby.
You never watched this, you said?
I think it's the kind of the same thing as some of the others. Looking at the cartoons and everything, I think I did see a couple episodes. I think it kind of made a comeback on Cartoon Network. Like, when I say comeback, like they just were replaying it.
Right.
And I think it was probably Saturday mornings, because I do recognize a couple of these pictures, these little video clips that I've watched. The big thing is like the drawing, the art for me that I remember. And so I did watch, like I said, I watched probably a couple episodes. I think what they were doing was 2 episodes of a pup, and then it went into What's New Scooby-Doo or something like that. So I do vaguely remember a pup.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these shows kind of did come out late 80s, early 90s. So if they didn't really have a good rerun setup, we could, that could be a big part of why we didn't ever get to see them. Whereas we saw more of the originals because the originals were always put out. Like they always were playing the originals, but these newer versions didn't always have the say so as far as getting to be put back on the air. So that could be why we only ever saw maybe a random episode here or there, because we were, for the most part, much too young to really be watching these as they were airing. So that's kind of the downfall of these shows.
I think you probably hit it on the nose with that one. And I don't know, like you really can't touch Scooby. Like even the newer ones, like the What's New Scooby-Doo was a second, like a secondary show, and even that it could not top the original show.
Right.
I mean, just kind of similar to how the Muppets with the Muppets. I remember one of the episodes watched probably way more times than I care to admit, or episodes or like specials, was the Batman and Robin Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin.
Oh, okay. That sounds kind of familiar.
And my oldest brother's huge Batman fan, and he's also a huge Scooby-Doo fan, and so that was like perfect for him. So I think also I kind of had that to think of with some of these Baby Toons. my brothers being older, probably having watched some of the Baby Toons when they first came out, there's biased and it's not as good as the original. So why are you watching that? Oh, you're watching Baby Toons because you're a baby. Me being the youngest, I didn't want to be a baby. I wanted to hang with the big kids, so I'd watch the big kids' tunes.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on A Pup Named Scooby-Doo?
I thought it was a good show. I mean, I thought it still was very keeping true to what Scooby-Doo was. You know, I thought it was still very well done. And it was a little weird seeing, you know, the humans as these younger versions of themselves. I liked it.
Now, was this taking place, do you recall, was it taking place in their high school years or like their middle school years?
I want to say that they were teenagers, so probably more high schooly.
So it kind of,
how old are they in the original?
I think they're supposed to be like college age, like 20s or something.
Okay.
So it kind of makes it where the live actions kind of in a sense followed how it was. Like the first live actions were the adult, and then we went back like when the Mystery Gang was getting started. Like the most recent live action ones were them as high schoolers and everything, going through high school. So I kind of, that's an interesting little parallel there with that. They should have, instead of calling it Scooby-Doo, they should have just gone with a pup named Scooby-Doo also.
I don't know why he was a pup. I mean, he still looked like he was the same size, but...
He's a little bit smaller.
Is he a little bit smaller?
Yeah, he's got, like his feet, like he's not grown into his feet and everything. The ears they probably should have done, made just like a little bit bigger, because that was one thing too, like he
had such memorable ears.
Yeah, and he wouldn't have been like grown into his ears at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, I do remember a couple of these episodes, but again, it was one of those where it didn't do it for me like the originals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing tops the originals. If we had started out only watching this version of it, then we would probably be on the other side of it and be like, oh, no, this one's better. But yeah, I do think you have, if you started watching the originals first, going into these versions of it, you probably would think, oh, like, that's cool, they're continuing on, like, let me try watching it. And then, of course, it's like anything today, it disappoints you because it's not the original like you expected. And that's always a bummer. But so, to transition into our last one, did you know that the producer of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo also helped to work on Tiny Toons?
No.
Yeah.
Huh. Well,
so that's a very interesting little...
That is. Well, Tiny Toons is actually the one that I remember the most.
Yeah, me too.
Out of all of these. And, I mean, Looney Tunes, by far. Now, this was also the only one where they weren't they truly different characters, the babies?
Yeah.
And you sometimes saw the original adult. There's one episode that I will never forget of Tiny Toons, and don't ask me why. First response when you mentioned Tiny Toons was, Ducky go down the hole, Ducky go down the hole.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that completely until you mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that's where it came from.
Yep. I don't know. That just, whoever the voice actor was, just how they did it, it was just something that stuck. And actually, I haven't seen that since elementary school.
Yep.
It was probably the most recent, at least probably 22 years. And I could still see it going like that episode specifically. Because it was other things too. It wasn't just the ducky. It was like, while I go down the hole, and like, that's such a kid thing to do though.
Oh my gosh. Terrible, honestly. Yeah. I was like, it was giving me anxiety watching that. No, don't put that down there. No. No. Oh my gosh. But yeah, watching it as a kid, you probably think it's hysterical. And probably, I can't imagine how many kids went and tried to imitate that.
Probably more than they would have liked. That one was, those were different too, because Looney Tunes had a different way of doing their episode. It was almost like
Yeah.
three stories or something in a single
Yeah, it was segmented
plot.
into. I mean, there were other shows that did do that some too, like the Flintstones, Tom and Jerry, and the Yo-Yogi. They also kind of would break up the episodes some as well into little shorter segments.
I think I remember Tom and Jerry, but the others I don't remember it being. Well, I guess I can kind of now that you bring it up, I can kind of see the Yogi Bear one, but I didn't realize Flintstones did
I don't
that
know if
too.
the original Flintstones did that, but it said the kid version did that. It had like segmented in most of their episodes, which I guess is kind of a nice way to, especially for a kid show, it's a good way to maybe keep the kids' attention if you have little shorter storylines instead of one long one that you have to try to keep up with the whole way through and be like, wait, what just happened in the beginning? So it was a good concept, I feel.
Absolutely. That one was, like you said, for kids whose attention spans are already all over the place. But here's my next thing. But did that help hinder to where now as adults our attention spans are still very choppy because of those shows? Because we were like grown up on those, and it's like, like it's a 3 to 5 segments in a single episode of a 30-minute episode.
Yeah, exactly. Which I guess is a good way to be able to allow most of the characters to kind of have, something, because you wouldn't want to put all the characters in one bit, because then that's just so many characters. So I guess it kind of was a way to break up that a little bit. I feel like the most memorable thing for me is it has to be the theme song. Like there's just no getting past that theme song. It's da, 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 da. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's super catchy, but also super annoying after one time. Like that was a bad part about rewatching it on Hulu, is that there's no like skip intro thing, so you had to try to either sit through it or fast forward through it, and I'm like, okay, I heard it once, that's great, but can we not keep doing this? Like that's the thing between the Looney Tunes and the Tiny Toons, is that the Looney Tunes didn't have any words, I don't think, in their song, whereas the Tiny Toons did have this whole song, and it just kept going and going and going.
I'll be honest, I don't really remember on whether the Looney Tunes did or not.
Yeah.
But no, I completely...
I don't think it did.
I completely agree on that with Hulu. It does make it very difficult.
Dumb.
And so you're just kind of like, shit, like, how do I do this without, like, driving myself crazy? I do think the Tiny Toons was probably one of the better
absolutely.
Baby Toons, especially the ones that we've touched on.
Yeah, I think that the style of the show was just so different than a lot of things, like the humor that it, put out, it was violent in a sense, but not too overly violent, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I had a good mixture of both, and I would have to say my favorite character was Sylvester.
Love Sylvester.
From Looney Tunes. I mean, he was in the Tiny Toons as well. He had some cameos and stuff, but definitely my favorite growing up. I don't know why, but I still have tons of memorabilia from my childhood of Sylvester things. And I had a cat growing up that I named Sylvester because he was black and white, so he kind of looked like Sylvester.
I still remember. What's also interesting is that a lot of these that we've actually talked about were because of the production company I had a deal with Six Flags. And so the different Six Flags theme parks across the country are more Looney Tune bait, have a lot more Looney Tune stuff.
Right.
And so I just remember that was a big thing, and that I think probably helped feed my love of Looney Tunes. But do you remember the cups?
Yes. The cup. Mm-hmm.
We had a Bugs cup. We had gotten a Bugs one, and we had a Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah. Tasmania. I think I had the Sylvester one. I don't think I have it still.
I think we finally got rid of ours like after I moved out, but we only had the two, and
Yeah.
with there being three of us kids, there was always a fight of who got it. And of course, me being the youngest, I always drew the short stick. Really, I forgot to drink out of either of them unless I hid them from my brothers.
Those are a cool cup.
Those were, and I did really like how the continuity Tiny Toons had with Looney Tunes. This was really the only one that truly had continuity with the original.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's probably also why, for me, growing up, I enjoyed Tiny Toons more than all these others because it was very much a continuation.
I mean, Looney Tunes is almost like the original. I mean, they've been out since the 30s, so I feel like that has been the cartoon in all the families. Probably almost anybody that you talk to, you probably could mention Looney Tunes and they would know what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been around so long. And they're still putting out stuff. That's the crazy thing, is that they still are doing stuff with it. I know they have a new show coming out. It's called Looniversity. I don't know what it's about, but they do have a new show coming out that's based off of some of the Looney Tune characters, I'm assuming.
Well, that's the thing, like that, and
which is wild.
It really is. And I mean, they did the live action Looney Tunes with Brendan Fraser, and they also did Space Jam, the one with Michael Jordan. And so that, I think that kind of had helped keep things going, made it to where as a child watching Tiny Toons, my parents didn't mind it as much because there were those cameos from the original. And so it was able to kind of tie things together. So it wasn't a situation like if watching, like, say, Flintstones kids, for example.
Exactly.
They're like, what the hell is this? Like, this has there's no continuity between what I know and what you're watching.
Exactly.
I think that made it to where Tiny Toons kind of personally stood out above the rest on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that this was a Steven Spielberg project.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, it's a Steven Spielberg's Tiny Toon adventure.
What?
Yeah. And I think I want to say the new one that's coming out is also through Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, it's Tiny Toons Looniversity.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I really had no idea that that's who was kind of behind the creation of Tiny Toons.
I didn't know that either. Just as a little side note here, this Tiny Toons Aversity that's coming out, Joey Lawrence is one of the voices.
Oh, interesting.
But that's interesting that Spielberg was a part of it, especially at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious as to if that's why it was able to be so popular, or if it just, lucked out and it was just a good show that people enjoyed regardless of who was behind it. Did you ever have the video game though of Tiny Toons?
No.
Okay.
I can say that with conviction, I did not.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we had it. I do recall playing that a little bit. I don't know. I think what Tiny Toons did was a little bit different than other shows is because I don't know if Looney Tunes was the same way, but they kind of focused on a lot of pop culture type references.
Yeah.
There was a lot of parodies in the episodes, and they referred to a lot of different things that were going on at the time that I felt you could kind of relate to a little bit more. It wasn't just like a story or just like a little bit, they had references that you could be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I think Looney Tunes did that a lot too. If I remember correctly, they kind of had some of that too, which made it, like you said, more enjoyable, almost bringing it back around, kind of almost like The Simpsons. How The Simpsons does a lot of pop culture references, and that's another one we'll just have to get into have its own episode, because that came out
its own episode. I never watched The Simpsons.
Well, I mean that's a big. I'll be honest, I never watched them either, but that was always a big 90s
Yeah,
show.
I know, because it came out in the 90s, right? So
89 was when it first came out.
Yeah, pretty much a 90s thing that...
We may have to touch base on it. Well, we may have to break our pact of not... Actually, I've watched a few episodes just because, like...
Yeah, oh yeah. I feel like I watched it more as a kid with my parents. And once I became old enough to like know that I didn't care for it, I stopped watching it. But
Yeah.
I know that I watched it growing up, and we had Simpsons stuff here and there. It was probably more of like my sister's forte. So then again, you know, I kind of got drawn into, oh, what's this about? And
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
completely understand. But like I was saying, I think it took from Looney Tunes that aspect of keeping pop culture in it.
Yeah.
For people to have more references and not feel just like a plain cartoon.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that Tiny Toons eventually was unfortunately canceled because they were making room for Animaniacs. So they kind of pushed Tiny Toons out for that production.
Interesting.
We'll enjoy talking about that later because I did really like Animaniacs too.
Animaniacs. That's honestly like I think the one thing that I remember about that show is the theme song.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like this was definitely interesting to like retouch base on all of these Baby Toons. I will forever call them the baby boomer Baby Toons.
I love that. And it fits them perfectly.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are. I mean, what else can you call them?
Yeah. And so it's almost like, okay, the kids that grew up on the originals are now in the workforce and now able to have made their way up to positions that they can call the shots. And so they want to have their own piece of what they grew up with and call it theirs. So they wanted to create these. That's honestly kind of how it feels to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any favorites from really any of the shows we watch as far as episodes or anything, because like I said, like I don't remember enough to be able to go down that path. But a lot of these were very memorable shows as kids growing up, and I think it was kind of cool to see these versions of them, and the fact that they're still putting stuff out today for all of these shows, I think really speaks volumes as to how these shows really are just perfect for any person, any generation, any whatever gender. It doesn't matter. Like these shows are perfect for whoever. So props to all those people that came up with these shows. Geniuses.
For sure. Personally, like I said earlier, my favorite was probably the only one that I really do remember is that Ducky You Go Down the Hole episode. Honestly, out of all of these, the only one that still has a small little blanket in my memory from growing up. I mean, they're still trying to do it with different shows and everything now is these revive of things. And it's interesting to just see how things have progressed and changed.
And honestly, some of these newer animated shows that they're putting out and even versions of these shows, I don't know. Like, I love the old style of animation way more than what's being put out now. Like, some of it's kind of too creepy. It's too, like, I don't know. There's just too much going on. And I enjoyed and appreciated the more simple style of animation that most of these had, you know, very flat backgrounds, and only the characters that were doing stuff were, you know, the ones popping out and moving and stuff. I don't know. There's just something about that just is appealing to the eye. There's not, you know, your eyes don't get overwhelmed with everything that's going on. You can see what's happening. You can see who's talking. And I don't know. It just, to me, it just works better.
I feel there's more of a personal touch with the old animation because it was very, you think about it, the time, I'm not saying that animation now, there's no time put in, but the time that was put in, because every single millisecond was drawn on paper, however it was done. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall during one of those. But now with computers and everything, you can do so much more. So people do focus on everything as opposed to the main story. They want to throw in those little Easter eggs or those little extra conversations when back then they had a time slot to fill. They couldn't go past it. They couldn't be under it. And so everything, I feel like everything was just a little bit more thought out and planned. Whereas now, if you've got a tablet or anything, you can make your own animation and put it out there. And there's just so much now coming at us. Like I said, I think technology has kind of taken away some of that personal touch.
Unfortunately,
It's
yeah.
just the way we're going.
But yeah, I mean, this was fun, and I'm looking forward to talking about more animated shows. As much as I don't really like animation now as an adult,
Very
so
true.
it's kind of hard to get into some of these again. But I know as a kid that was a huge part of growing up. Like it was animation, animation, animation. Everything was animated,
Yeah.
you know? So I don't know. Maybe I just had too much animation as a kid and now I'm like, I am done. I can't do anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I know for me personally, there was certain animation that I like. I was sometimes a fan of it, sometimes I just didn't care for animation as a
Yeah.
kid. Even just looking back at some of these older ones as we're doing this, I still reminisce with watching those Saturday morning cartoons especially. I mean, that was a big thing. And so it is going to definitely be fun to continue to touch on everything as we're progressing.
I agree. Yeah. If anyone has suggestions for us as far as like any episodes from these shows that you thought were amazing and you think that we should watch them, let us know because I would be curious if there were any really good ones that maybe we missed or didn't know about or whatever. But let us know and let us know your thoughts on these shows as well. If you remember watching them as kids, if you preferred the originals or if you preferred these baby boom tunes. Which version did you prefer? I think here at 90s Noise, we preferred the originals from all
Absolutely.
of them. Yeah. Other than that, that's all I got.
Yep. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and we will be back next week with another episode of 90s Noise.
I think we're wrapping up 1990.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing our little wrap up episode and then moving on into 1991.
My birth year, yay!
She's finally born.
I'm finally born. I finally know that these aren't going to be just things of reruns. Oh man, yes, finally get into 1991. Yeah, we're just gonna keep chugging along. Make sure to let us know if you have any suggestions on something you'd like for us to watch in general from the 90s, whether it be a show, a movie, or some music. Let us know and we will touch on that for sure. So
Yay. All right. Well, peace out, everyone.
peace.